Okay, so let's talk about procrastination, why it happens. Like, even when we've done all the strategy stuff, we still are procrastinating, can't quite put our finger on why. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. I am the queen of procrastination. I think that some people think that you procrastinate because you're really not into whatever the project is.
So, yes, I think people do think that, and I think a small number of people, that is true. So,
Mhm.
procrastination, like, it's not a one answer thing. It's not like this is the one thing that's causing procrastination. So if people have like lack of clarity, boredom, there's not like instant gratification, stuff like that. That definitely can cause procrastination. But there's lots of pretty amazing strategies that can help with those things. Those are simple, so to
Mhm.
speak, right? Those are easy to overcome if you just have some pretty cool like strategies or little tricks or something. So because that's so easy to come by, I'm not going to talk about that. I want to talk about like the deep stuff. When you try the strategies and you're like, I still am just not going to sit down and do the thing. And I
Yeah,
don't know why. I want to. I've amped myself up to do it, but like something in my mind's like, no, we're not doing this today, right? So I want to
right.
talk about that. Why does that happen? So from that perspective, I want to talk about how imposter syndrome comes into play.
Mhm.
So if you didn't know, procrastination is a really big indicator that you may have some imposter syndrome going on. So we'll talk about how those two are related.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like for me, I procrastinate because I get overwhelmed. Like I put too much on my plate. But I do agree that I think that for some people, they're procrastinating because they just don't think that they're good enough for whatever the thing is that they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah. So so imposter syndrome. So just so people are clear, right? Because people throw this phrase around a lot, and a lot of times what they really mean is self doubt. Like
Mhm.
they say, "Oh, I was experiencing imposter syndrome. I was having imposter syndrome," and what they really mean was, "I was having some heavy self doubt, and it kept me from doing the thing." Imposter syndrome is when you inherently, like at the core, identity level, don't believe you are the kind of person who can do the thing. You don't believe that you are capable. So, an indicator is when you're like, you feel like if people were to see the real you, they would realize that you're a fake or you're a fraud. That's imposter syndrome. That's not like, oh, this is tough. I don't know if I can pull it off.
Mhm.
That's like, people really see the real me. If I were to follow through on this thing and actually try to, put it out into the world, people are going to see that I'm
Right.
not good at what I do, that I've just been faking it, right? Just now, that said, despite external evidence, despite the fact that there is proof that you really are good at the thing, that you really are capable. So that's what differentiates. So just so everybody's clear, because procrastination can go hand in hand with self doubt, but it's not going to smack you nearly as hard as when it's associated with that imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Do you think that it comes a lot of times from comparing yourself to others?
So comparing yourself to others can trigger imposter syndrome for sure.
Hmm.
Comparing yourself to others, even having somebody leave. So, like, we're all business owners, so we get reviews, testimonials, stuff like that. And then, just somebody who feels like they want to have an opinion, even though we didn't ask for it, they like to share that too sometimes. And so, somebody who shares a negative review or opinion, that can trigger our imposter syndrome as well. And that can definitely throw us into a tailspin of not wanting to put ourselves out there for fear of, right, for fear of being
Like
seen,
judgment
fear of
or whatever.
judgment, for fear of
Mhm.
failure, all of the things. Then people will find out that we're not as good as we have said we are. We're pretending to be, right? I say that sarcastically because even though that's not true, that's what the thought process is.
So, do you have any strategies to help people with this?
Yeah. So a lot of them actually. So okay, so here's the important thing that we need to understand before we can get into strategies. I definitely want to share some strategies. But before we can even get into strategies, I think it's important to understand that imposter syndrome, um, not imposter syndrome, procrastination is something like a fear pattern, right? It's there are certain things that are going to show up. Our brain is going to do when we're in imposter syndrome that's going to keep us from moving forward and doing the thing and getting seen, right? And so perfectionism, project paralysis, which is essentially just deciding you're not going to do the project, like freezing, right? Like the fight, flight, freeze, it's just freezing a project. Even people pleasing, those are all ways that imposter syndrome shows up and keeps us from moving forward. Procrastination is one of those things. Mm-hmm. And the thing about that we need to understand about this is, one, it is our brain essentially trying to keep us safe because it thinks if we show up in the world and people realize we're not as good as we want them to believe that we are, then that's something it has to keep us safe from. And it gets really, really tricky. The brain is an incredibly clever thing, right, so to speak. So it'll create reasons to keep us in. So I mentioned like perfectionism, stuff like that. That it's applicable to all those things. But I wanted to really focus on procrastination because this has come up a lot for people lately, and people have been asking me about it. So I really wanted to talk about procrastination specifically. If our brain is trying to keep us from putting ourselves out in the world, right? Trying to keep us from doing the thing, it's going to tell us all sorts of clever lies to keep us from moving forward. So, like, it's not ready. You've got a little bit more tweaking to do. So you need more before I can, put myself out as a business owner. Maybe you need like one more credential, or you didn't quite finish your degree program. Let's knock that first. You need to do that before you're really ready. You're not quite prepared yet if you don't just take one more course, right? So it's going to convince us that we're not qualified, even though we really are.
It's like trying to keep us safe.
It's keeping us safe. That's exactly what it's doing. The problem is it's keeping us stuck. And anybody who's trying to get anywhere, especially those of us who are business owners and trying to grow a business, that doesn't suit us to stay in the safe zone, in the stuck zone, in the comfort zone, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to have ways to get through the procrastination, through the imposter syndrome. So there's two things that we can do for ourselves, right? There's a zillion, but let me break it down to two. There's things that we can do in the moment. So those are quick fixes. And so those help whenever we're spiraling in the moment, or we're hesitating, we're trying to put the brakes on something that we really need to be moving forward through. We can use these quick fixes to just get us through that moment. And they're good. They're great, actually, because we have to find a way to get us through the moment. But they're a Band-Aid, essentially. We also need to have our long-term things that we're doing for healing imposter syndrome, if you will. So the quick fixes, yes, they're going to help us in the moment. To that, I want to say, one, they are going to get us through the moment, but two, I'm going to share what that looks like, because there's just push through, just fake it till you make it, just get it done, do it scared, right? The reason that we have these, what I'm calling quick fixes, is because we don't want to do it scared. We don't want to just power through with all of the stress and anxiety and fear, because when we don't attend to the stress, to the anxiety, to all those things, right? Are we still going to get the thing done? Yeah, we're probably going to get it done. And at the same time, we're battling the stress response, the fight, flight, freeze. What's happening when we have the stress response is we're flooded with stress hormones. So we're not thinking as clearly. It's wreaking havoc on our body, and not just like tension in the muscles, right? It impacts every single system in our body. When we have those stress hormones flooding our system, all of our organs are not doing everything as well as they could be for us. We've got, blood pressure issues, heart issues, all the things. And so like the fake it till you make it, to just push through. If you were to do that one time, would it be that big of a deal? Not really. But if you do that on repeat, because you're like, oh, that's good advice, I'll just fake it till I make it, right? One, you're telling yourself, if I have to fake it, that means I'm not good enough, which is not true. But two, you're just pushing through the fear. And so you're consistently allowing the stress response and that flood of stress hormones and all the havoc it's wreaking on your brain and on your body to come back on repeat. and that's horribly detrimental for your overall health. So the quick fixes, they help us to minimize the stress that we're experiencing in the moment. So yes, we are going to power through and do the thing, and we're going to have our little band-aid to get us through it. But it's really still attending to the stress in the moment too. So we're not pushing through stress. We're fixing the level of stress we're experiencing, and then we're moving through. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So when we're attending to procrastination, anything that's coming up in the moment that's trying to keep us from moving forward, we have to do a few things. We have to get grounded, essentially. So like a lot of people can resonate with that phrase, get grounded. So basically what that means is you have to bring down your level of stress. So something as simple I've talked about a million times, and I'll talk about it a million more times. And it's the simplest thing any of us can do is just the deep belly breaths.
Mm.
If you want to bring down your stress level in the moment, the best thing you can do is do some deep breathing. So once our stress level has come down a little bit, then we can do another exercise if we need it. Like if we're having that critical self-doubt kind of talk, we can attend to that in the moment. So we're needing to calm the body, then we need to calm the mind, and then we can do the thing. And it feels like, okay, but if I have to do this thing real quick, how am I going to do all that stuff? So I'm explaining it, and that takes a little bit of time, but in reality, in the moment, it doesn't take that much time.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of really cool exercises to go along with this. If anybody is interested in getting deeper than just deep breathing and doing some other grounding exercises, some visualization or something like that, they can drop a comment. Let me know. Just say grounding techniques, and we'll have the discussion about that. I'll share some examples if we can do that. But so those are the band-aid moments. Now, long term, people also need to be doing that work to work on the identity. So it's the same stuff. It's learning to minimize the stress. It's working on attending to the body, attending to the mind, the inner critic, that stuff. But it's doing these things on repeat. So what you're doing when you do these things on repeat is you're changing the habit of going to the negative into a new habit of going to the positive. Or so, a better way to put it, because negative people say bad and then positive good. It's not to say you're bad, you're doing bad, this is bad. It's to say it's not serving you. Mm-hmm. So do the thing that better serves you. So what happens is when you do these things, these exercises, these practices on repeat, they create those new neural pathways. So the connections in our brain that say, uh-oh, stress thing, this is scary, stop, don't move forward, don't do it. Oh no, take another class before you do that. You're not qualified, right? Instead of going into that space, our brain learns through habitual behaviors to go, oh, it's cool, I got this. Deep breathe, quiet the inner critic, do the thing. And it feels a lot better moving forward through that stuff. And the more you do it, and the more you heal the body and the brain through that stuff, the more naturally that path gets created and becomes your norm.
Yeah. I feel like initially I was just like, well, like I just pushed through all of my own fear, especially when it comes to public speaking or standing in front of a crowd or any type of video thing. I just remember the first time that I did it, and I've shared this many times, my heart was racing. I thought I was going to pass out. I just thought that everybody was going to know, like, oh, she's just so new, because I had just started my business probably less than 6 months before I started doing all of these things. And that's why I was mentioning the comparison, because I would internally say, oh, well, I'm not as experienced as them, so why would somebody choose me? Which, again, goes into the branding, but also the self-work that we talk about all the time. And like, if you're not prepared, like if you haven't gotten over all of those things, then it's going to be really hard for you to run a business and like do certain things that you're not comfortable with, right? It's like getting comfortable with the uncomfortable.
100%. And the thing about, so I said a lot of people will use the phrase imposter syndrome when they're really talking about self-doubt. Mm-hmm. But the thing I wanted to highlight is amongst business owners, about 80% of us actually do experience imposter syndrome. So it is a very real thing for people who do what we do for a living.
Yeah, I have a friend and she is so smart. She's so smart. She hates getting on video. She hates doing any like speaking or anything like that. She'll get on the phone with you, but nothing video related, nothing in person. But she comes up with the most fascinating strategies and ideas. But she's often one of those who will, and I'm just like, oh my God, that is amazing. That's great. You know, you should do that. She'll do all of the things. Now, mind you, she has about 15 years of experience. So she has all the credentials and her work is stunning. Get all the way up to the point right before, like I'm talking build the website, do all of the things, create all the automations right before it's ready to launch and then not do it because of her own fear of judgment, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say for people who just want the Band-Aid, I would say that's never a great answer from my perspective. If there's a way to heal it, there's a way to make it better for you, do that. But for people who just want the Band-Aid, these little simple, like quick fixes, they're gonna push you through the moment when you need them. But for people who really truly want to heal the imposter syndrome, and yes, you can move away from imposter syndrome. It's not a thing you're stuck with forever. Doubt is, imposter syndrome is not.
Mm-hmm.
People who actually do want to heal that imposter syndrome, I would say seek a professional.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's something that I can do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking about it. So by all means, if it's something that you want to work through, let me know, and I'll let you know what that looks like. We can talk about it. But it doesn't have to be me. You know how I feel about this. Even if you want to work with somebody else, I would just encourage people who are like, oh, that sounds like me. Like, there's a fix for that. I want to know about it. Seek the help of a professional, because if somebody doesn't really truly understand the difference between self-doubt and imposter syndrome, I'm hard pressed to believe that they can help you through it. If they can't help you go into your mind and body, then there's a piece missing. You're not getting all the way through it.
And I will attest to the power of having a coach. Now, listen, like in athletes, they have coaches, you know, any type of, any person who's performing, they have coaches. I think that sometimes, though, for some people, they feel like they don't really they can't see the value of having a coach walk them through the process. But like we've mentioned, like, if you don't get over these things, then you're not going to be able to progress. Like for me, like, yes, I was scared, I was petrified, but the more I did it, the easier it became. And now it's like second nature to me to do that. But it built my confidence along the way by doing that. And I think for some people, though, it would be the opposite, right? Because they would be living in that fear constantly.
Yeah, the longer you live in the fear and you tolerate it and you push through instead of working through, yes, you build you. What am I trying to? How am I trying to say this? The impact of the stress that you were experiencing, because whether you realize you're in a stress state or not, you are.
Mm-hmm.
If the negative thoughts or inner critic thoughts or the self doubt thoughts have happened, your body has gotten the signal that something's off, and your body has responded. It's responded in your muscles by tensing, and it has responded by flooding you with a stress hormone, because the stress hormone is signaled to keep you safe. So if your brain says something's wrong, your body's like, cool, I got us. Let's keep us safe. The more it does that, the worse it gets
Mm-hmm.
for your body, for your mind, for everything over time. It's a compound effect. So yeah, you can ignore it. You can keep ignoring it. I can't force you not to. You can keep ignoring it. But the effects are compounding. And one of these days, you're not going to be able to ignore it.
Yeah. So I definitely recommend all that. I used to do the thing where I would breathe heavy. I would still feel anxiety before I would, you know, get in front of people. I still feel a little bit, but I feel like it pushes me through. I just do it.
Yeah, well, okay. So to that note, right, you don't completely get rid of fear. Fear serves a purpose. It's not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's not good when it's constant and it's flooding us and it's keeping us stuck. And when it's coming up when we're not really in a life threatening situation, we don't really need to be kept safe from putting that video out on YouTube, right?
Right.
If there's a lion chasing us, we need to be kept safe. If we're walking along a cliff edge, we need to be kept safe. If we're getting ready to show up on social media, we really need to be kept safe. But if we let the fear run wild, that's what's going to try to do for us. So we're going to go into things, we're going to have a little bit of fear, but the intention is to bring down that stress level. And so it minimizes all of the impact that happens when we're in that state of fear. Also, one more thing I wanted to mention on that, we can get ready to wrap up, but there is very little difference between fear and excitement. Like literally in the body. If you get used to feeling the sensations in your body, when you experience an emotion, there are sensations happening in your body. So this is part of what I do as a coach. I'm also certified somatically, which means to deal with the body. And so I help people reconnect that mind body. And so when you think of thought, you experience that in your body. And so when you experience fear, you're going to have a sensation happening in your body. When you experience excitement, that sensation is barely, just barely off from where you experience the fear. So when you start to identify things like that, you can start to shift the fear to excitement. Okay. So with all that said, if you are recognizing that you're experiencing imposter syndrome, or if you're curious, you're like, maybe I'm not really sure, can you help me figure it out? I absolutely can help you figure it out. I have a very simple assessment that you can take, and I can go ahead and go over and let you know if it sounds like that's what you're experiencing. In that case, let me know and I will get you set up with the assessment. If you know that in fact you are having imposter syndrome also and you're ready to start working through that, let me know and we'll get it set up so that we can start working through it.